Hi, Jaryd Krause, host of the Buying Online Businesses podcast, and I'm talking with Brendan Tully today from wpspeedfix.com. He also owns his own SEO agency and has been in this space for very long. He's also built his own speed tool to help people gain more speed from their websites and get a better insight to what they need to do to gain that speed to have a faster loading site. In this episode, Brendan and I talk about why speed is important for our websites and how we can improve our websites with different tips, tactics, and tools that we can use, some for free and some paid, even though they are inexpensive, to ensure that we can have a faster site loading to gain better SEO rankings and also for better usability of our site. So if you own a website, any site, listen in, because we talk about so many things. It's like a fire hose of tips, tactics, and tools that we can use to gain a faster website for our online businesses. Hope you enjoy. Today's episode is brought to you by Investors Club. Investors Club is a marketplace for serious buyers interested in proven businesses that aren't listed anywhere else. There is a free membership where you can get access to 14-day-old listings and can purchase due diligence reports for $47 each. Or if you become a paid member, you can get instant access to every single listing, unlimited due diligence reports, no fee escrow services, access to exclusive offers from Investor Club partners, and priority support. Now, sellers do sign a 2-month exclusivity agreement to only list with Investors Club. There are no purchase fees or commission, meaning the seller nor the buyer ever pay commission in any deal. And every due diligence report provides next level metrics to make sure due diligence is far less time consuming, making it quicker for you to seal the deal. Also, Investors Club have a great Q&A support available both for buyers and sellers. I'm a full member myself personally, and a lot of thought and effort has gone into this service. However, there are a limited amount of seats for this membership, so go and check them out at that URL, investors.club. That is investors.club. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Buying Online Businesses podcast. And we have Brendan Tully here from WP Speed Fix. Thanks for jumping on, Brendan. We just had a good chat before we hit the record button, so we probably should have hit it a bit earlier. But thanks for coming on. I'm pretty excited to talk about speed.
Cool. Me too. I like talking about speed. Nerd out on this stuff all day long.
We got the need. So first and foremost, most people don't really know how important speed is for SEO, right? Like it's, I guess they start building a content site, or they bought a content site or bought some sort of site, and they don't really know, like in our community, I actually break down and teach people how to do some speed testing and see how, like what the speed is of the load speed of the site.
Yep.
But we don't go further into like the deep dive on how to change some of that. They could optimize it if they buy the site, if it is a thing that they need to do.
Yep.
But why is speed even important for SEO? Like for just the beginners that don't know why?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the market's probably split in two: people who don't know anything about speed, and then people who are just insanely obsessed to it to the point of irrationality. So the reality probably lies somewhere in the middle of that speed is important. It is a part of SEO, so it's certainly a checkbox you'd want to tick off in terms of an SEO process or a whole SEO strategy. I mean, broadly speaking, speed is important from a visitor perspective, because everybody knows get to a site, it's slow, takes a while to load, you lose patience pretty quickly and click away. Yeah. So, I mean, the starting point is people like things to be fast. There is a point where people will click away if it's too slow. There is a point where the site is so fast that it doesn't matter. So we certainly, when I think about speed, I kind of break it into two. There is a site that is slow that needs to be fixed so it is fast enough. And then there's people who have a fast site already, but they want it insanely fast, like as fast as possible. So we certainly, for someone who's just bought a site, you certainly don't want it to be noticeably slow. So regardless of what speed test tools say, you don't want to be clicking on stuff thinking, is it loading? I'm waiting for it to loading. it takes, in those few seconds that you're like thinking, I'm waiting for it to load. Is it loading? That's a problem, because if it's,
noticeable,
sitting on the toilet, Facebooking away and clicks on your link, they've got no patience. So broadly, we want a fast enough site for visitors. And then Google have also added speed into their algorithm. So people get a bit obsessed about it needs to be lightning fast, or I need to hit this score to rank in Google or for my SEO. And that's not entirely true. Google they don't want to see it slow. They want it to see it fast. Speed will probably become more important than Google as technology goes on and they give it more emphasis. They're actually really, the guy who runs speed at Google, or one of the guys there, is actually really aggressive, and their bar for a fast site is insanely high. So I suspect in the next 12, 24 months, speed will become a much more important ranking factor. Right now it is important, but it's not like, I wouldn't say it's one of the top 10 ranking factors, but certainly if the site is slow to the point of feeling slow to load, then that's going to be a problem. So I think that's the question.
No, that's awesome. The key thing that I'm realizing here is like the key word, is noticeable. Like when you're sitting down, you're clicking from one platform, social media, wherever it is, to your site. If the human being goes, oh, hang on, this is actually loading. Like we're just like, if it's not going to be like something we really, really want to see, it's not worth waiting for. It's just, we're out of there like worse than goldfish attention span type thing. And so it's always been a thing where Google or the algorithms do help sites that are faster rank a little bit higher. But it's not as important right now. Is that what you're saying? It's more about the usability thing.
Yeah, I mean, it is a factor. Like it is, I'm not going to say it's not a factor, because it is, and they say it's a factor. And we have, we do. So for years, we couldn't find a test where we would say we've made a site faster and it ranks higher because it's faster. It was always like, okay. So the weird thing is that, well, not weird, but when you fix site speed, you typically fix a bunch of underlying technical things that they hurt the speed, but they also hurt the SEO in different ways. We fix some of the code or whatever it is, or redirects and things like that. So up until the last 12 months, it was very hard for us to say, yep, we did this, it's faster, now it ranks higher. We could always say, oh, we fixed this, but that's probably why it ranks higher. It's not necessarily speed, but definitely so one thing that's important that doesn't necessarily show up on page speed tools or speed testing tools that people kind of ignore is the size of a page. It's called the page weight, but the size of the page in megabytes. So we definitely have cases, and we have an SEO agency as well, where we have had client sites that they have a lot of pages that have a lot of page weight. So and a common one is photography websites or photography studios, or a site that has lots of project portfolio kind of pages with a lot of images, where they have a lot of pages where they might be 10 meg or 20 meg in size. We have definitely seen ranking issues with those, and fixing those, we've seen the rankings move up pretty dramatically. So there's probably two things to keep in mind is moving it from slow to passable definitely helps. Moving it from passable to lightning fast right now doesn't seem to help that much. There might be some edge cases that we're super competitive, or where there's super high volumes of traffic where that is the case. But we have several times proven to ourselves now that the slow to fast or slow to passable does impact rankings. But it's not that like people kind of get obsessed by it. They're so focused on speed, and they'll spend days messing around with speed and ignore the 50 other SEO things that are broken with the website, or even like the website is just broken in general, like they haven't tested the checkout, or their links don't work, or it's missing a whole bunch of images. So I guess speed is important. I mean, the guy who's selling speed optimization services is saying it's not the most important thing. I should be saying it is the most important, but realistically, there are other things from an SEO perspective that are more important, but it certainly is an important part of the process.
Yeah, and it's only, like you said, it's only going to become more important. For example, when I'll put it in just an example for people to understand, I guess, is that, and this is the way that I see it, playing out is that when I know that I'm on, and we both know that it's going from social media platform to another website, there's a lag there.
Yeah.
And what these platforms don't want to reward or rank high in their algorithms is sites that slow down that process from going platform to website. And I can definitely see that Google, if they haven't already, which they probably have started, but it's not at a crazy scale, like you said, it's going to eventually get to, where Google doesn't want people to go, oh, cool, I found an answer to my problem, and I'm just like, I got to sit here for a full second for it to load. Google aren't going to rank those, right? Like, it's just like, you're making those websites, or say it's my website, I'm making Google look bad, even though it's not really their fault.
Yeah, and it's a shitty user experience. Like, Google want a good user experience for their visitors. So, and it does seem that user experience, things like how long people hang around on a page and what they do on a page, it does seem to affect rankings. So user experience broadly is part of the ranking algorithm. Specifically what those numbers are, I think there's a lot of speculation online, but speed is part of user experience. One thing, and we talked about this before, one thing that is more important than speed is reliability. So again, that's one of those things that we often fix when we do speed work, and it's not really the speed that's affected the ranking, it's the reliability. So I would say that the reliability of a site is at least as important as speed, if not twice as important. So if the site is going down or has intermittent outages or is throwing errors 1 out of 20 page loads, that's not good, and it's going to throw errors for Google as well. So that, I would say, that would be, even before looking at speed, looking at the reliability of the site. And one thing that we recommend to everybody is to have uptime monitoring on the site. So we use a tool called Uptime Robot they have a free plan. So it's like crazy. Like, I tell people this every day of the week. Most people don't do it. So they have a free plan that checks the website every 5 minutes.
What's it called? We'll put a link to it.
It's called uptimerobot.com.
Okay, excellent.
So they have a free plan and they have a paid plan that checks it every 1 minute. But it's crazy that people just don't do something simple like that when it is actually free. Like, it's insane.
And is this checking your uptime of your hosting? Because I guess people might not know what uptime is. Like, for example, sometimes your hosting might crash for a second or two, and it takes a while to get to the page. Or is that, what specifically is uptime for those who don't know?
So in the uptime robot sense, it's going and loading the page, and it's making sure that it returns a server code, a 200 server code, which means the page is loading okay. There are different ways the site can go down, so it doesn't necessarily catch every single error, but it is a good broad measure. And we don't want downtime. Like, most hosts will say they have 99.9% uptime, which sounds really good, but that still means it could be down for a day, a year at least.
Yeah.
So I'd say you need to monitor the uptime. We started doing this for our agency clients nearly 10 years ago, because we're managing SEO and managing these websites. People forget to renew domains, and it's 2 days later, and then they call us telling us the website doesn't work. So we actually started monitoring uptime for that very reason. It's kind of a roundabout way how we got into doing speed work. But you want to be ahead of any issues. And also, if there's a couple of other things that it will pick up if the host doesn't have enough capacity. If you're getting a lot of traffic and the site can't handle all that traffic all the time, you might have a peak load during a busy hour during the day, or the hosting might be doing a backup, which means it's, there's more CPU power being used or less available for visitors. So it'll pick up things that are not necessarily a problem, like an outage, so to speak, that the host knows about, but it could be just the site's under too much load, the hosting plan needs to be upgraded or something like that. So it's a good broad general check of a lot of different factors that are important to the site. And if the site's down, it can't make money, it's like affecting. So generally I'd recommend Uptime Robot. I would say get the paid version if the site's monetized even a little bit. And maybe stick the top 10 or 20 pages in Uptime Robot, because a single page can also have errors. It's not just the entire site. So, you might be using a plugin on some of the inner pages that doesn't fire on the home page. So those inner pages might be throwing an error or something like that. So
I could imagine that Google would absolutely hate sending to somebody to a page that is not up, it is not loading and has an error, like worse than somebody has to wait 1 second to get onto it. So I can see what you're saying there for sure.
Yeah. And their crawler as well. If their crawler is hitting your website and every second time it looks at that page, it's offline, it's probably not going to go well for your rankings. So.
Not at all. So that's, an SEO thing that we need to fix for sure. Yeah. What other elements, of SEO impact speed or vice versa? Is there some SEO tactics that, create pages to load slower, or are there certain things that, like we mentioned before we hit the record button, different code that can, make the site, rank higher but load slower? Is there those things?
Yeah, kind of like the weight of every page matters. So like you can fill a page full of images and video, and that's good for, generally speaking, a longer page will rank higher, is the general rule, not always the case. But if you stuff a page full of too many images, then if it's not well optimized or not optimized properly, then that's going to be a really heavy page. It might rank high, but then it might be slow to load. Marketing tools can definitely slow down a website, particularly if they're inserted into the website in the wrong way. Like broadly, if they're inserted into the top of the website code versus the bottom, that can slow things down. So if a busy site might have half a dozen tools, like Hotjar, Facebook Pixel, Analytics, AdWords tracking, and a few other bits and
Google
pieces.
Tag Manager and all that stuff. So that's better to not be in the header. It's better to be in the footer, is it?
Most of the time it's better to be in the footer. Not always the case, but generally speaking, it's better to be in the footer. So when a browser or any device downloads the page, it's executing the code as it reads it. So if there's a marketing tool that needs to fire, it's better firing after the visitor sees the page than beforehand. One great example of that is a live chat tool. So live chat apps or tools are all very heavy. So it's basically a piece of software running inside the website. It's heavy to download. It uses CPU juice on the device. So we don't want that to it's called render blocking. We don't want to have the live chat tool block the site loading. And we don't want it competing for CPU power when we want the device itself, a phone or a computer or whatever, we want that to render the page. So we want to show the page as quickly as possible. So one thing we do with live chat tools is move their code into Google Tag Manager, and we add a 5-second delay. So they actually don't load until the visitor has been on the page for 5 seconds. So what that does, it allows the device, whatever's accessing the site, to just focus its CPU power on actually showing the site. And then once someone's been on the page, then it loads through. And what you actually find with a lot of bigger sites or something like an e-commerce site where people are actually clicking through a lot, like they go to a category page, click a product, go back, click another product, quite often that happens in less than 5 seconds. So they actually have a much better experience in some cases on a big site like that, because it doesn't impact the live chat. Most 99.99% of people are not going to a page and the live chat within 5 seconds. So that's like an easy optimization, one of the optimizations we developed by accident. So
that's really smart.
Yeah, that's a good example of something that helps marketing but doesn't help speed. So yeah. What are some of the other things that you look at, or maybe some low-hanging fruit for people that are like, all right, well, I don't know how to wrap my head around this. Well, maybe we should look at some free tools versus paid tools first, and then talk about what you can find on those tools that you can make changes instead of confusing people, I guess. Sure. So I'm going to plug our tool here. So we built
100%. This is an awesome tool, guys, because we were just talking about it.
So we built this tool. You can access it at sitespeedbot.com. So we built our own speed test tool because the ones on the market didn't do everything we wanted to do. So it'll give you a good idea of the optimization opportunities, and will also tell you how to do it. So it'll tell you if the page is too big or too fat in terms of page size. That it measures several different timings, and it'll tell you which ones are out of spec or can be improved and whatever, and how to do it. So if you go there, it takes 60 seconds and it will give you a result straight back. There's no opt-in, nothing required. So check that out.
What's the link again, just for those who want to check it?
Sitespeedbot.com.
Yeah, cool. Check that out, guys, as well, because that's free for now. But like, we were talking about some different things that may be adding value. So check it out while you can.
Yeah, we also built a very basic SEO tester in there as well. So it'll tell you, it analyzes the title tag and meta description of a page, and it'll tell you if there's some improvements there you can make. So do that. In terms of a checklist, so we talked about uptime monitoring. So I would get that in place first. And if the host is going down several times a day, it's either a problem with capacity or it's just a shitty host. So
yeah.
If you're on Bluehost or GoDaddy or HostGator or a host where you're paying $2 a month, that's probably a problem. So you probably want to look at a better host.
I've made those mistakes before.
Yeah, it's just a false economy. And you don't, unless you're running uptime monitoring, you won't see the issues or the downtime or whatever. So have a look at the hosting. And also, the location of the hosting is really important. So here in Australia, it's very common for people to have an Australian business targeting Australian customers, but the hosting is in America. So pretty much any traffic that has to travel over an ocean, the site is going to be half a second to 1 second slower for those visitors. It's just the geography, that's the physics. So you want to be hosted physically close to the majority of your visitors. So for an Australian business, you really should be hosted in Australia. So the hosting quality and the hosting location. And then moving on from location, you probably want a content delivery network. So that is, it's essentially a form of hosting. It's a network of servers that sit in front of the hosting or next to the hosting, and it will deliver a lot of the static files on the website. So the images, the CSS, the JavaScript files. So that comes off someone else's server. It comes off the content delivery network server. So that's a win in a couple of different ways. So one is the CDN service will have a lot of different locations. The one we use and recommend most of the time is Cloudflare, and they have a free plan, which is great. They have 160 locations now, so there's going to be a server that's going to be more geographically closer.
They're the most popular one because we use it as well. Yeah,
I think like something like 5 or 7% of all internet or website traffic goes through Cloudflare now. It's insane.
It's huge.
So it brings the visitor or the data closer to the visitor, but it also takes the load off the hosting. So because they're doing a lot of the work, the hosting is freed up to do the crunching or whatever it needs to do. So you kind of get a win in two ways, and the site can cope with more traffic. So you probably will have, if you have a big site, you can get away with a smaller server if you've got a CDN in place. But yeah, I check that out. The paid plan is only $20 a month, so it's nothing anyway if you need to move up.
Yeah, if you're making a couple of grand a month and it's, say a content site or an ad site, it's certainly worth it, isn't it?
Yeah, and the paid plan also has a firewall built into it, so it'll filter a lot of the crap hitting the site, a lot of those scrapers and crawlers, and even spam through contact us forms and things like that. So it's pretty good in that way. So those would be the big ones, and then probably looking at image optimization. So using a plugin to compress images is a big one. It's a paid plugin called Short Pixel. It's dirt cheap. It would be, to optimize an entire site, it probably costs $5 or $10 for the.
Oh, that's great. Cheaper than Fiverr.
Yeah, it's dirt cheap, and you just sit there, run the compression, and it might take a day to do it. Let it run overnight, but that'll reduce the page weights quite substantially.
What's that one called? Just for a link for people.
Short Pixel.
Short Pixel plugin for WordPress. Yeah.
So do that. There is also something called Next Gen Images or Next Gen Image Optimization. So everyone's aware of JPEGs and PNG files, so that the two common image file formats. There's a new, it's not really new, but it's a newer format called WebP that Google created. So not all browsers support WebP, so you can't just change all your images to WebP, but they are smaller. So a lot of the time they'll be 50% smaller than the JPEG they came from. So ShortPixel does next-gen image optimization. So it will serve up. There's a few different ways it can do it, but basically adds the code. So if the web browser supports WebP files, it will use those instead of the JPEGs or PNGs. So if you had a homepage that was 2 meg, for example, you might compress it down to 1.5 meg, and then it might only be 1 meg with next-gen image files. So it can be a pretty big win, especially for people on slow connections. So because there's much less to download. And then if you're DIYing, you really need a caching plugin. For the DIY, a plugin called WP Rocket would be the one to go with. It's super simple.
Yeah.
It's pretty cheap. It's like 30 or $40, something like that, for a single site. And it also has a lot of other optimizations built into it, not just caching. So caching is effectively the pages that are generated in advance. So when someone hits a page on the website, WordPress, well, I assume most people are probably using WordPress. So WordPress has to do some database lookups, execute some PHP code, and then send the page to the visitor. So what caching does, it does all that work in advance. So the page is already built before the visitor comes, so it's nice and fast. So we're skipping that process of building the page. So you need to have caching in order for a site to be fast. So some hosting platforms have caching built in, some don't, but if you need to check that box. So WP Rocket would be, if you're not technical at all, that would be the one to go for.
Yeah, the simple one. Yeah. I've got I had an experience with my site. Did I do it last year? It might have been this time last year, maybe a bit earlier. I was on one of, and I won't name them, I was on one of the hostings that you mentioned before, and I thought, yeah, I could pay maybe just a couple of dollars more a month, and I changed my hosting to Cloudways.
Yep.
And my site speed halved. And that was just changing the hosting over, which can be quite simple. And
they'll do the migration for you a lot of the time too. So.
Yeah. So guys, check that one out. That's probably what I see as the best low hanging fruit, other than some of those plugins you mentioned. Like it's definitely DIY at its best, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. If you have the time and you can Google things, you'll be able to figure this stuff out. But definitely Cloudways is the hosting provider we recommend. So dirt cheap. And the funny thing about the cost of hosting is we're talking about on a cheap, crappy host, the cost is like a cup of coffee, whereas a good host, it's a half decent lunch. So it's not like it's a huge jump either. It's pretty much, they're in the same price bracket essentially. So. And
it's one of those a month. So it's not like you're doing it every day. It's just
exactly. And it's the thing that makes you money, right? Like it's the core foundation. And if you're paying for SEO or whatever, all that's going to perform better with better hosting.
Yeah. So we have people that are going to go away and try and do all this, because we've got some pretty big action takers on this podcast. And like there's some mistakes that people make when they're trying to, go away and DIY, or they read something and they try and do one thing and it blows up in their face. What are some of the common mistakes that people should kind of be looking out for, Brendan?
That's a good question. And you just made me realize we probably should tell people to back up their stuff before they do anything. That's probably one of the big common mistakes. And outside of speed, I would say two important things, like especially if you've bought a site, you've bought this asset. There are two things that are probably critical that you would ignore normally. One is backup, so have a backup of the site, and actually download the backup so you have it offline, so it's not just floating around.
Like a hard copy on your hard drive somewhere.
Yeah. So we use BlogVault for backup is the plugin we use. There's dozens out there, but we like BlogVault because it's cloud-based, and if it breaks, it tells you if it's broken. And it also tells you if it's not backing up files. So pretty much all backup plugins will ignore some files, like caching files or log files and things like that. So it'll tell you specifically what it's not backing up. And sometimes those files need to be backed up. So that's how we actually started using that years ago, because we had to do a restore and found out half the files weren't being backed up. So that wasn't fun, but we fortunately got it out of another backup. So
for example, for me, because I use Cloudways like you recommend, so I can just go to Cloudways and I can just download it and then upload that back up to this tool that you use?
So Blog Vault is, so we actually,
they do it automatically.
One of our rules is we always have 2 backups. So even though Cloudways has a backup, we also use Blog Vault on top of that. So Blog Vault will back up to their cloud stuff.
Okay.
So
cool.
It's a plugin that backs up to their servers. I'm guessing they store it on Amazon somewhere. So
yeah.
So backup, whatever it is, you need to have a backup, and you need to have offline copies of the backup just in case. And then probably the other one is the domain name, making sure that your domain name's paid. Renew it for 10 years in the future if you can. Most domains you can renew into the future.
Yeah.
So I'd say those are common mistakes that totally screw people over, especially the domain name one, because everything is based on the domain name. So if you lose that, you've lost the site or the business.
And check your emails. Like when I have my domain names, you're probably the same as me. We've probably got a bunch of domain names that we once bought once upon a time.
Yep.
I get an email, every year when it's going to auto renew. Check that and just make sure it's on auto renew, because that can be you can send you off into a real pickle, because you can just lose your whole site.
Yeah, absolutely. But easy to ignore those emails as well. It's like, whatever, I'll read that later. So, and making sure the details are up to date too. Like I guess that's probably an issue. Some people buying sites is like making sure that you legally own that domain. Like it's your name when you get the site transferred over to you.
That's a huge one, actually. So I have a due diligence framework and people that are listening, they can go away and get it for free if you just go to the free resources tab on my website. But in that due diligence framework is a bunch of questions, Brendan, about what you should be checking throughout your due diligence. Right. And one of them is, have you got proof of domain ownership? And sometimes the domain ownership proof will be hidden because people can hide that. But if you're buying through a broker, guys, just make sure you check the broker's got proof somehow.
Yeah.
But that's a good one. So
we've had issues with that in the past with our agency clients, where the IT company from years and years ago owns the domain because they set it up for the client. Yeah. So legally, their name's on the domain. Legally, they own it. And I've heard a couple of times they've had a fight with the IT guy doesn't want to hand it over, or he's been a dick, or they say they owe them some money. It's just
the IT guy doesn't want to hand it over.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
Inverted commas for those who can't see.
But other common mistakes, those aren't really speed, I guess. But so we talked about the uptime. Another one is people test the homepage one time from one location. Like that's really just a snapshot. The speed vary from each individual test, because the load on the internet varies, the load on the site varies. So the speed will waver from test to test. But I would say test all the pages, all the important pages anyway, the top 10 or 20 pages if you're doing this exercise, because they'll all load at different speeds, and the page weight is really important. Like that's something that's often neglected, that you might have a lightning fast homepage, but if your top 5 blog posts are huge pages, 5 or 10 megs, they'll be slow to load. Like that'll take forever to load on a slow mobile device. So I'd say test all pages, test pretty regularly. Like if you're buying a site, you probably should have some sort of maintenance in place where you're checking the plugin updates once a month or whatever. Yeah. So I'd say do the speed at the same time. And also when you publish new content, just have a line in that process to be like, hey, just check the speed and make sure that this page actually loads fast, because it might not a lot of the time. It's something I'm always trying to get clients to do is, just add it into the process as another step. Like you set your SEO fields, you upload images or whatever, just have the speed test as another thing. But that's probably the biggest one, is that almost nobody talks about, hey, speed is not just the homepage, it's the whole site. So yeah.
And especially those pages that are either your money pages, or some people are buying sites that have most of the traffic will go to the top 3 to 10 pages. You just want to be checking that. Look, we've just gone through so much. I think people listening are just going
like a fire hose, all right?
Yeah, it was awesome. I love it. So guys, check out the notes for this episode, because there's just going to be a bullet point list of stuff that you can go away and implement and check out. Make sure you check out Brendan's tool. There'll be a link there as well. But if people want to find out more about what you guys do at WP Speedfix, Brendan, what you have coming up, because you got some pretty cool stuff coming up that we talked about off air. where can people check you out?
Well, check out the speed test tool and then check out the website at wpspeedfix.com.
Cool. Thanks so much, Brendan, for jumping on.
Awesome.
For those who have listened, thanks so much for listening. If you like this episode, please do me and Brendan a massive favor by going away and giving us a review and letting us know what you liked about the show, so I can bring more of that to the next shows that are coming up. So thanks again, guys. And thanks, Brendan.
Thanks, mate.